Today's episode is sponsored by Craftsy. Whether you're new to making or looking to advance skills in a favorite hobby, Craftsy is the place to learn. With over 1,500 classes, there's something for everyone, from knitting and sewing to baking and cooking, gardening, embroidery, quilting, and more. Visit craftsyoffers.com today for a special holiday deal. Get a full year of Craftsy premium membership for just $3. That's 97% off the regular price. Start turning ideas into projects you can be proud of. Thank you so much, Craftsy. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 232 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustyalliance.org. Today on the show, we are talking about creating a craft magazine with my guest, Meghan Fernandes. Meghan is a knitting designer and instructor, as well as co-founder and creative director at Pom Pom. After 10 years in London, she's now based in Austin, Texas, where she lives with her husband and young daughters. And she revels in the challenge of making and enjoying knitwear for a hot climate. Meghan Fernandes, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I love Pom Pom. I'm excited to learn more about it and its history and how this beautiful magazine came to be and has endured for quite a long time now, about 10 years. So that's a huge accomplishment. And so tell me first how you learned to knit.
I love this story. But I was 16 and I had a boyfriend, like a long-term, serious high school boyfriend. And his mom was great. And I knew that I wanted to learn to knit. And so maybe it was my 16th or 17th birthday, I'm not sure. She bought me a sweater's worth of yarn, took me to the yarn store, bought me a sweater's worth of yarn and sat me down and made me knit a whole sweater. But she's an amazing person and we still keep in touch. And I send her books and magazines every now and then. So it was a really nice experience and a nice person to learn from.
Yeah. What kind of sweater was it?
I struggle to remember. I think not realizing how special it might be to me later in life, I pulled it apart and made different things out of the yarn.
That's funny.
Like a year or two after. But it was like a purple marled, like a light purple marled kind of yarn. And it was a copy of a pattern that she'd had since the 70s or something. And she gave me like her project bag to put everything in, and it was a really sweet experience.
Yeah. And you said though that you had known you wanted to learn how to knit, and then she kind of took it from there. How did you know you wanted to learn?
I'm not sure. I don't really remember. I definitely didn't think of myself as like an artistic or a creative person back then, but I did like doing kind of crafty things. And I do have a memory. I think my first memory of knitting was seeing somebody in the waiting room of a doctor's office knitting something. And I remember like staring at it and thinking, how is she doing that?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. And where were you growing up?
I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C.
Oh, me
Virginia.
Too. Yeah. Okay. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, so not too far away. Yeah. Okay. And you said you weren't really identifying as like artistic in those early years. What kinds of things were you interested in?
That's a good question. When I was a kid, I loved to dance. And so I think that was probably my main interest. And I loved to read. So I ended up doing my degrees in English, which surprisingly people think, oh, you're never going to use an English degree. But here I am.
Yeah, you will if you found a magazine. So, okay. So you love to dance and you love to read. And where did you go to college?
I went to college in Boston at Northeastern University.
Yeah.
And I mainly chose that because they have a program where you can work while you study. and they help you get a job that has something to do with your degree, maybe. They sort of say that they will do that. I don't know if that any of my jobs then really did that, but that way I was able to work my way through college.
Yeah, I know Northeastern's very unique that way. They have this like trimester sort of program. Yeah, I live right near there, so
there we go.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very cool situation. Did you have any specific work experiences there that you found to be like really impactful or satisfying?
I'm trying to think. I actually ended up my job. The one that they kind of organized for me ended up being at the university in the commencement office. So I learned a lot about event management there, which came in handy. I worked as an event manager later before I started Pom Pom, and just kind of the inner workings of like an academic institution. So that was interesting in that way, and just kind of my boss there was probably the most organized person I've ever met. And so I learned a lot from her in that way. So it wasn't totally useless experience. And I did enjoy it.
Right.
And I worked on Huntington Avenue in Boston. And, it was just like a great place to be and a fun place to work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Getting some of those professional sort of skills and mindset, it sounds like. Yeah, that's great. So afterward, you said you worked as an event manager for a while. I know something brought you to London, and you were in London for a long time, and that's where Pom Pom was founded. So what were the steps that happened after graduation that eventually led you there?
Well, I actually left Boston about halfway through my degree to study in London, because the other thing about Northeastern is that they really encourage things. They call it experiential education. So things like you can do as much study abroad as you want. So I did. And I did like half my degree in London. So I think starting in sophomore year, junior year, now I can't remember. It feels like a long time ago. I did study abroad in London, and I met the man who's now my husband there. And when I realized that I could keep studying there, and that I love the city, I did everything I could so that I could keep going to school there. And so my degree is from Northeastern, but I did half my degree overseas.
Wow. At what college there?
I did a summer program at Cambridge, which was amazing. And then I did a lot of like roundabout things while I was there, but I was able to be like a guest student of James Madison University, which is in Virginia, of their study abroad program for a semester. And then after that, I went to Goldsmiths for the rest of my undergrad degree, which is an art and design focused university there. And then I did my master's at King's College in London.
Wow, so cool. Yeah, you must have really fallen in love with London. I've been there and it was great. But I don't know, like if I at 18 or 20 would have been like, this is what I want to do. I want to live here. It's like pretty adventurous, far away from Virginia for sure.
Yes, I think that was the point.
Yeah, right. Escape from home. Yeah, absolutely. And so after you finished your degrees, were you able to get work in London?
Yeah, actually, while I was still an undergrad and at Goldsmiths, I got a job at a publishing company.
Oh.
And that was my only time working for a publishing company that was not Pom Pom. And I was, very, very bottom of the ladder there. And in fact, my job was to basically translate British English to American English. And it was a lifestyle publisher. So they did books about like interior design and craft and things like that. So I was the person who changed all the Z's to S's or vice versa for the different territories.
I see. That's funny. Okay. So, but it actually dovetails really nicely with Pom Pom in that, they were publishing materials that were meant for creatives.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. And I learned about the different departments, what a picture researcher does and things like that. So it was cool. It was a really nice first job to have in London.
Yeah. Sure. So how did you meet? I know that Pom Pom was co-founded with Lydia Gluck. So how did you meet her? And were you working somewhere else, or how did you two kind of come together?
Yeah. So after I finished my undergrad, I did, then I started working at a gallery for architecture where I was the events manager, which was really interesting. And I met lots of really interesting people. And then I did my master's degree in English literature. And then I kind of was at a loose end and started working in a yarn store in London called Loop.
Okay.
And Lydia started working there around the same time, and we just kind of hit it off. And I think, working in a yarn store is so fun. And, I would sit there for hours when it was quiet and look at the wall of yarn and plan projects and, try to make the job into a creative one. And, there was lots of opportunities for that, like helping customers figure out what kinds of yarns they wanted to use for things and stuff like that. But Lydia and I both noticed that the magazines that came through the door were not ones that really spoke to us really strongly. And it was around the time that there was kind of a renaissance in beautifully made magazines. Things like Kinfolk were starting, and Frankie magazine out of Australia. And my husband is a graphic designer and creative director. And, I'd be flipping through knitting magazines in bed, and he'd be like, And he actually got one of his first jobs was at a music magazine in Scotland. So all of those things brewing, Lydia and I were kind of like, it would be fun if we kind of tried to make a magazine as just kind of a creative project. She had recently finished a master's in linguistics, and we were both kind of at loose ends about what we were going to do with our lives. And so, I recently got an invoice to renew our domain, and it said that we bought the domain in February of 2012, which I think was about a month after we decided that we were going to do this.
Wow. So, that's pretty fast. So had you been knitting all along since your high school boyfriend's mom's lesson? Or had you had you improved your skills and kind of really gotten into it? Or had you been designing? Or, because it sounds like when you were at loose ends, you were like, oh, here's what I can do. I'll get a job at a yarn shop. So I'm imagining you must have been, knitting or at least been interested in yarn.
Yeah. So, through my early college days, it was just a fun thing I did. I knit beer cozies or scarves for my friends and things like that. But then around the same time that I was doing my master's degree, Ravelry started. And, knitting blogging, as you know, craft blogging was kind of exploding then.
Yeah.
And I think there was some point through all of those years where I was home, maybe writing I probably was writing PhD applications, which thank God I didn't do that. That would have been a mistake. But I had a lot of time at home, and so I was blogging and knitting a lot. And I actually wrote my master's thesis on knitting in 20th century women's literature.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And so it was definitely front of my mind for a while, for a few years before we started working at the yarn store and started Pom Pom.
So is there a lot of knitting in 20th century women's literature? Now I'm trying to think back of all the 20th century women's literature and references to people knitting.
Virginia Woolf has a lot. And so she was the main focus, but also A.S. Byatt. They were the two authors that I focused the most on. But at the time, it was a thing where a lot of my professors were like, oh, nobody's ever written about that before. And so they were really excited. So it was great that I had kind of an original idea to write about, because, with sort of classic literature or, stuff that's in the canon, there's, a lot's been done already. So they were excited that it was kind of a new a new thing to look at.
Yeah, a new sort of focus on women's work. So yeah, that's cool. All right, so you met Lydia, and were her skills? I mean, one of the things that's really valuable in going into a new business with a partner is that you bring different skills to the table. So I know you mentioned she had a degree in linguistics, and you have one in English. That's sort of similar, but did you feel like your skill set and hers were complementary?
Yeah, I could not have been luckier in finding someone to start a business with. I think, when I talk to other business owners who don't have a partner, it's really hard for them because sometimes they have to go outside their organization to have somebody to bounce out ideas off of, which I'm sure works for a lot of people. But for Lydia and I, it's really nice to have somebody be like, yes, that's a good idea. Or maybe we should think about this a bit more. And we seem to be on the same wavelength about a lot of stuff, and we trust each other a lot, and have a lot of respect for each other's opinions about things. I would say that she was definitely had more of a creative background than I did when we started. But we do have kind of a similar taste in things, but we kind of apply those tastes differently, which I think is really good. I think if I had started Pom Pom by myself, it definitely wouldn't be the same thing that it is with Lydia, and vice versa. So yeah, we both have sort of language arts backgrounds, which obviously helps when you're writing and editing a magazine. But creatively, and then also business-wise, we have different strengths.
And do you have some tips for people who, because when you are in a partnership, owning a business together, that person becomes like your work wife, you're in contact with them sometimes more than you are with your spouse, on a day-to-day basis. And there can be differences of opinion. People can also go through, big life changes over 10 years that stress the relationship in different ways, or just some day-to-day crisis management with the business itself. You've got financials and how to spend the money that's coming in and make those kinds of decisions. So do you have any tips on the longevity of your partnership and what's made it work?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, both of us have been through many big life changes in nearly 11 years of being partners. And it is so amazing to have a partner to lean on in those situations. Like, I've had 2 kids, and, in the UK, it's not unusual for people to take a year's worth of maternity leave. And Lydia was like, take a year if you want, And I was like, I'm not going to do that to you. But, I took 6 months with both of my kids, and she's taken sabbaticals for various things. And so I think, being able to lean on each other has been huge. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what advice I could give to people who are not Lydia and I. I think we just got really lucky finding each other and having such similar values. And we were, pretty young when we started. So I don't know that there's any way that we could have known for sure that we would have all of these similar values and continue to have them as the years went on. But I think just knowing that one person can take the time they need, or have the break they need, or the slack they need at one point, and then the other person can pick that up at another point, is really good, and having that understanding for each other.
I want to take a minute now to talk about our sponsor, Craftsy. And here is a message from Craftsy. At Craftsy, we know making. Whether you're new to the handmade life or looking to advance your skills, we have classes for all maker levels and interests. From knitting and sewing to quilting and embroidery, cooking, baking, paper crafts, and more. Craftsy's instructors guide and encourage you, empowering you to turn ideas into realities. And they have an exclusive offer for Craft Industry Alliance podcast listeners. Right now, you can get a whole year of their premium membership for only $3. Visit craftsyoffers.com for a special holiday deal. Sign up and the discount will be automatically applied at checkout. For only $3, you get a full year of access to over 1,500 premium full-length classes. It can be challenging to know where to go to learn new things, especially when you're an absolute beginner. Craftsy's instructors help build strong foundations as they teach, setting you up for success and helping you fix mistakes as you go. Their enthusiasm and strong teaching style make learning accessible to all. If you're an experienced maker and looking for new challenges and fresh projects, Craftsy is for you too. From perfecting your fondant skills to tackling complex stitches, from eye-catching garden design to next steps in sourdough, Craftsy has advanced classes in all crafts from instructors who are experts in their field. With over 1,500 classes, including downloadable patterns and recipes, Craftsy has a class and a craft for everyone. Visit craftsyoffers.com today and get a year of Craftsy premium membership for just $3. That's 97% off the regular price. It's an awesome holiday deal. Start turning ideas into projects you can be proud of. Get this exclusive offer at craftsyoffers.com. Thank you so much, Craftsy. And at one point, there was a really big move because you were in person together in the beginning of the business, and then you moved back to the U.S. into Texas. Yeah. So first of all, what brought you to Texas? And then how do you two keep in touch? Like what systems or apps or things do you use to be able to keep in touch and plan, these giant projects, which are putting out issues and books and things like that?
Yeah. So after 10 years in London, I needed some vitamin D. I think actually, truly, like physically and emotionally, I needed some sunshine. And so my husband and I decided we would move to the States. He's actually Australian, but also Scottish. And he was excited about the idea of moving to America. And so we looked at a few different places and where he could work and where I could work. And we had been to Austin on vacation and really loved it and could see that our quality of life or sort of the lifestyle would change a lot if we moved to Austin. And I remember breaking the news to Lydia and it being not an easy transition to take on, but actually I think it worked out pretty well. And I think Lydia would agree because we were able to expand into the US market a lot more. And actually, because we are such good friends, when we're in the same room together, it's kind of hard to get stuff done because we like to chat about everything. So being in different places actually makes us a little bit more productive. But now here in Austin, we have a location where we ship US orders from and all that kind of stuff. So it's been interesting. At first, we used to fly back and forth for photo shoots. And alternate them between the U.S. and the U.K. But the pandemic and babies kind of put a stop to that. So now we each just take on different photo shoots depending on the season. And we use Slack, and we're on Slack together every day of the week. And our whole team is kind of spread out now, and there are 9 of us. So when I moved, there was no way of knowing that businesses would work like this, kind of because of the pandemic eventually anyway, but we had kind of already put that into practice before it became totally necessary because of the pandemic.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to that time when you're reading knitting magazines in bed and your husband, who has a graphic design background, is looking at them, and you and Lydia are talking about the ones that are coming into Loop and thinking there's room in the market for something different. So what was the knitting magazine scene like when you decided to create Pom Pom?
Well, I think it was a little different in the UK compared with the US, but Loop had both in the shop. So, it was, the kind of glossy, thin paper that we were used to back then. And in the UK, you can buy knitting magazines in the grocery store, and often they come with like a little gadget or like a pair of plastic knitting needles, like in kind of a plastic, what's the word for it? Like a little like plastic covering.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. We've all seen that kind of thing. It's sort of like bundled with the magazine.
Yeah. So, and there might be like 20 patterns in an issue, and they would come out monthly. And it seemed like we could do more quality over quantity. And, we knew that knitters are like tactile people. And, indie dyed yarns were just blowing up at the time. And so people being really conscious about the materials they were using, and the fact that you spend so much time making something, the materials or the magazine or the book or whatever you're using should kind of live up to that standard if you can. And so that was kind of our vision. And to use all those indie dyed yarns, because I think with traditional magazine publishing, a lot of the yarns they used were dependent on like big advertising dollars. And that was not something that we were doing. And so I think along with some indie yarn brands, we kind of grew with them, alongside them and together by working together in that way.
Right. And what about advertising? Because all of us have, opened those magazines where, I don't know, like half, or sometimes it feels like more than half of the pages are all ads. And, that's the main way the magazine is funded. There's subscriptions and one-off sales too, but advertising is the primary way that the magazine is able to exist. So when you were thinking about advertising, what were your considerations there?
Well, we wanted small businesses to have a voice, and our cover price was a little bit higher. Well, it was considerably higher than the magazines that you saw on the shelf in the grocery store in the UK. But advertising has never been our main source of income. It's always been the price of the magazine. And it's funny because we always wanted to keep the ratio of ads low. But I remember we did a survey one year and somebody was like, I want more ads. And I was like, okay. So, and we always try to make sure that the ads are beautifully designed and make sure that the brand who's advertising with us is presented in like the best possible light that we know will appeal to our readers, so that it's like beneficial to both parties, that the readers see things that they are actually going to be interested in and that we know that they'll like, and so that the advertisers can get out there to audience that they might not usually have access to. So we actually have a really interesting way of doing our advertising so that people with all different kinds of budgets can participate, and that is a tiered system. So based on the company's turnover, the price changes depending on what their turnover is.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more for people who are listening who are like, "Oh, this sounds like a good place for me to advertise." So what do you mean by that?
So, and obviously we're not looking at their like financials or anything. We take it like on an honor system, but like we have 3 different tiers. So, if your company makes a certain amount of money in a year, then you pay one tier. If they make a higher tier of money annually, then they'll pay a slightly more expensive rate for the magazine.
I see. So the ad itself is the same, but it's based like the same size or on the page looks the same, but you're paying more based on the sort of overall size of your company.
Yes.
Wow, that's a really interesting model. I'm not sure that I've heard about that before, but it does make it possible for, as you said, smaller businesses to be able to advertise in a magazine. And I think when a magazine has advertisements that are very well done, I can see why that reader from the survey was like, I want more ads. If they're beautifully done, you do actually learn about cool things through the ads.
Yeah. So that was our aim. And, we sort of thought, oh, I wonder what, our advertisers with higher turnover will feel about this. But I think the spirit of inclusivity has really permeated the craft industry now. And I think that people they understand why we do it and why that is fair. And we've had a really nice response to it.
Yeah. Okay. So then you mentioned that the price for the magazine starting out, it needed to be quite a bit higher than the sort of thin paper, glossy paper magazines that were in the grocery store. And so how did you kind of figure out, it sounds like the paper is going to be nicer. There's going to be fewer patterns. Like, how did you sort of figure out all the sort of nuts and bolts of getting started? Because it seems for me like this is an overwhelming process. Where do I even go to begin to start an independently published magazine?
Well, Lydia and I always say that if we had known how much work it was going to be,
right,
we probably would not have
sure
done it. And we were so green, and I think that was actually to our benefit in a lot of ways because there were no rules to break. We didn't know what the rules were. But yeah, my husband, having worked in magazine publishing before, and then in print advertising, he definitely he knew about GSM, which is like how you refer to different weights of paper, and all of the inks and what printers to get quotes from and stuff like that. So that was definitely a leg up, having his experience there. And he designed the magazine to start with and did all the layout and stuff.
Wow. So. Yeah. So you all almost were like a team of 3 in that way.
Yes. Yeah. I guess you could say that.
Yeah. Okay.
He actually came up with the name of the magazine, so I will give him that credit.
Yeah. I was going to ask about the name because it's very cheerful. You think of Pom Poms, it's like cheerleaders. But also Pom Poms is something that, are fun to make. It goes on top of your hat. It's that extra embellishment. So I wonder what you thought about when you were, choosing that name.
Yeah, we had a long list of possible names, but I guess we just didn't really feel like we had hit it, on the head yet. And of course, in the UK, cheerleaders are not really a thing. So,
right.
So yeah, I think we were just chatting, and I was like, I need it to be fun and woolly, and he was like, Pom Pom, and I was like, that's it, that's the one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Has that name at all been confusing to anybody over the years, or have you had things about it that you're like, gosh, that name in some ways, is not to our advantage?
Not that I know of. Nobody has ever. I've been surprised that there wasn't a cheerleading magazine or anything that was already called Pom Pom. That would have been smart of them, but no, not to my knowledge.
Okay, so you had some expertise on your side, and do you remember, what do you remember about the first issue and sort of, how large was that print run? Because that's, you're putting up quite a bit of money, I'm guessing, to be able to fund the first print run and betting that someone, besides Loop where you're working is going to want to buy it.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of knitting friends at the time because we worked in a yarn store, and they were all like, oh, you should do subscriptions. And we were like, we haven't even started yet. They were like, you should do that. And then so, we started an Etsy shop, and people subscribed pretty quickly. And we knew a lot of podcasters, and it was a lot of word of mouth. And I can't remember if we did a Ravelry ad for the first issue, but I think we probably did. And we printed 500 copies for the first run. And we did have a problem with the first printer that we hired, and it didn't go well, and it was pretty stressful. But yeah, in the end, we had 500 copies, and we wrapped them all in tissue paper and wrote, handwritten thank you notes on each one. And I can't remember. I'm trying to remember how we even shipped them. Maybe we might have gotten a franking machine. But yeah, we hand wrapped everything, a lot of them from my kitchen table. And the whole production of it, the printing was our only cost, really. The production we did on a shoestring. So, and we had Lydia's friend model. We had her friend take the pictures. We had my husband do the layout, and she and I did all the designs and writing. So, yeah, it was a low budget operation for the first issue for sure.
And did you consider doing crowdfunding? And I forgive me for not remembering when things like Kickstarter launched. So I don't know whether 2012 was too early for that sort of thing, but did you think about crowdfunding?
I don't think we did. I think it might have been too early. Or maybe it was just starting. But no, it wasn't something that it's not something I remember considering.
Okay. Did you sell out of those 500 copies?
At some point, yeah, we did. Yeah, and then we did for our 5th anniversary, we did like a reboot of it and took new pictures, but kind of made it, we freshened it up a little bit.
Okay.
Because some of those patterns are still in demand. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that after the big huge push to get the first issue out, you know, it's a quarterly magazine, but I'm thinking now you've got all kinds of ideas and things to change for issue 2.
Yes. And I think I remember we had our friend Juju Vale, who's just multi-talented at everything and is kind of our fairy godmother. She took the photos for issue 2, and we did it instead of in the warehouse where Lydia was living with like 13 other people. We took the pictures like at a pub in London, and we definitely upped the production value for issue 2.
Okay, great. And so it sounds like you had an Etsy shop, which is pretty hard to use to sell a subscription if anybody's tried that. Like Etsy doesn't actually have that as an option.
No.
So how are you working that? And then I'm assuming pretty quickly after you had to switch over to some other system.
Yeah, I mean, that was 2012. So that was even, pretty early Etsy days too. I think we must have had a spreadsheet of some kind. So somebody would buy a subscription and then we would put them on a spreadsheet. And I'm sure it was just like a lot of manual record keeping. I'm sure it was, now that I'm thinking about it. And then I'm trying to remember when we opened our own online shop. And gosh, I can't remember, but I did design our first website online shop using WordPress, and thank God that we don't use that site anymore. we definitely upgraded from the one that I built from WordPress and WooCommerce. And now there are so many apps with Shopify and everything that make everything so much more streamlined and wonderful. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just a lot of spreadsheets.
Right. And the website now is really very fun, very kind of lots of not white space, because the space isn't white, but there's a lot of space for your eye to move around and like confetti, and it kind of feels very like I don't know, just very modern. And so do you want to talk a little bit about the design of the site as it exists today?
Sure. In fact, the sort of homepage of our website is reflective of a new website that will be launching in the new year. When it became clear that WordPress and WooCommerce were not doing what they needed to do, we got someone in who quickly sort of designed a very simple site. And since then he's been working on an even better site to what we have currently, which is really exciting, and should feel a little bit more like an online magazine than a website when it launches.
Okay. And you have a blog on there as well. And I think that it could feel kind of, I don't know, like redundant or like just another piece of content to tackle, right? Because if you're putting together a magazine, you've got articles, you've got photos, you've got patterns, and all of that, all the editing involved and all of that. And then to have a blog on top of it, that's a lot more work. So why have a blog as well?
Well, the magazine is quarterly, and it's meant to be a bit more evergreen. So something that you could come back to, and it doesn't feel out of date really quickly. not to say that the stuff on our blog goes out of date really quickly, but it's a bit more, it can happen a bit more often, and it can be a little bit more kind of up to date and, about events or things that other companies that are doing kind of in the moment.
I see.
Yeah.
And I was going to say with the magazine issues, you do want them to be very timeless, like evergreen. You can collect them. You're not necessarily meant to just recycle this when you're finished with it. And so there's no off sale date. Can you talk about what that means?
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people do collect the magazines, yeah, they are absolutely designed not to be thrown away right away and not to be just a kind of something that you read and then you're done with. They're meant to be something that you would come back to and that are worth spending your time and money on. And yeah, I think, Lydia and I are both people who see the value in objects when they're well made or well produced. So that's always been kind of at the foundation of Pom Pom.
And they're sold at independent yarn shops, like you were working at one. And it's a lot of independent yarn shops now who are carrying them. How did you work on expanding? And it sounds like having a shipping in the U.S., shipping hub in the U.S. was helpful. But how did you work on expanding that wholesale presence? And that seems like a pretty big job to sort of maintain as well.
Yeah, we have a wholesale manager in the UK and in the US. So they work, every day maintaining those relationships and reaching out to people. And for a long time, it was really nice. We had to do almost no work in that regard. People would always come to us. I mean, that's still the case with new shops opening and things like that, but we do also do a bit of outreach on our own. And yeah, it's a huge job. And Sophie and Jasmine are really, really good at it. And thank God for them, because when we started, Lydia and I were doing all of that ourselves.
Right. And is it also bookstores, like independent bookstores?
Yeah, we have independent bookstores. We have a distributor who specializes in specialist bookstores. And yeah, and then we, there are like select Joannes that will have it. Not all Joannes. I think they somehow know which ones people who will be interested in Pom Pom go to, if that makes sense, like New York or whatever. So occasionally you can find it at Barnes & Noble or Joann's, but yeah.
And that's all like arranged through this distributor?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. So when you think about how things have changed, right, this launch was back in 2012. We're in 2022. Obviously, we've all gone through a pandemic. But beyond that, or maybe part of that, how is the scene for knitting magazines or for, I guess, craft magazines in general sort of shifted over this past decade?
Yeah. I mean, when we started, I think we were the only one. Like as an indie knitting magazine. And some have come and go over 10 years, and there have been some new ones that have lasted a while. And I feel like each one has a distinct style, which is really nice. I think a lot of times on podcasts I get asked, like, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to start a craft magazine? And my advice is always like, find your unique sort of spot in the crafting community and your own unique style. And that's, I think, what's happened with the indie magazines that are out there now. And yeah, I think people come to expect a lot more from their magazines and books these days. And the industry is rising to the challenge, which is great.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of those glossy ones we were talking about earlier also fade away.
Yeah, which is, it's sad because I sort of grew up on a lot of those. And so even though they weren't what Lydia and I wanted to bring to the table, they were still kind of meaningful for a lot of people in different ways.
And has the paper shortage over the last, little while been a struggle?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. There's no way to gloss over that. It's paper costs a lot more money now, and shipping heavy magazines and books has become a lot more expensive. So it's absolutely a struggle. And I know I see almost every small business I follow on Instagram, whether it's in the knitting community or publishing community or any community, is struggling. Small businesses are having a hard time. So yeah. And
have you decided to raise prices, or?
We raised our prices in the summer. And I think it was time, it was long overdue. We hadn't done it in probably 5 years. And prices have continued to rise since then. So it's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
It's something that we spend a lot of time trying to work out.
Right. Yeah, I bet that does seem challenging. And now you also publish books, which is a whole sort of different sector of publishing. So talk a little bit about the expansion from a quarterly magazine, into book publishing.
Yeah, we actually published our first book probably 5 years ago now, and we love publishing books, and we've worked with some amazing authors and designers over the years, and I think that local yarn shops in particular love carrying our books, and especially we published a Learn to Knit book, which is probably one of the projects I'm most proud of that we've ever done. And it took us a long time to write and to edit and to really get right. Lydia and I have both been knitting teachers. Lots of our staff have been knitting teachers. And it is a book that shows you everything from the moment you choose yarn and needles through to making socks or a sweater. And it has patterns for everything in between and techniques for everything you need to know in between. And the feedback that we've got on that has been incredible. And I know a lot of knitting teachers use it in their classes. And it was published I think pre-pandemic, and it's still one of our best-selling titles.
And do you have like a warehouse where all of these books are? They're not in your garage.
Well, kind of, yeah. I actually have a detached garage. I'm very lucky here in Big Texas to have lots of space and have a detached garage where lots of that stuff lives and gets shipped to local yarn stores. And we also have a storage facility where we keep lots of back stock. But yeah. And then in the UK, it sits in different places with different distributors and things like that.
But somebody's coming to help you with all this shipping.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yes. I'm imagining like Megan out in the detached garage, like packing up all these orders. I'm like, this doesn't seem right.
No. Gail has been with us since I got pregnant with my first kid. So 7 years ago, and she is basically like family because she's at my house every day. And she helps. And then Rebecca also helps with the shipping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So you've got a whole team now, which is great, including some local folks that help you out. So, and I know you have a new book that's for kids, and I think this is maybe the first foray, and correct me if I'm wrong, into kids, and it's called Mini Pom.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. For a long time, people would ask us, oh, you're going to do kids patterns. And I was like, it's not really our thing, and of course now, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and, other members of our staff have also graduated into that, to that realm. So, and it was a really fun project to put together. And, it's most of the patterns are mini versions of Pom Pom patterns that we've published in the past, kind of favorite Pom Pom patterns for grown-ups, but made smaller, and then some new stuff too. But I definitely learned a lot during the photo shoot process.
With hiring like child models.
Yes. But it was really fun to do. And it's a really fun and happy and colorful book, which is, what we're about. So, Yeah.
And I would love to hear a little bit of a preview of the spring issue, which is going to be coming out really soon, of Pom Pom Quarterly.
Yes. So it's super exciting. And in fact, we're in the layout stage now. So everything's kind of coming together. It's that moment where everything comes together, the photos, the writing, the design of the magazine. And we shot it here in Austin. And the models kind of are the icing on the cake. We had Angel Flores, who was one of the contestants. I don't know if contestants is the right word, but I think they call them heroes on the most recent season of Queer Eye.
Oh, wow.
And somebody named Alicia Weigel, who's an intersex activist here in Austin. So,
cool.
Yeah, they're friends, and I think I saw them on Instagram sort of posing together, and I was like, oh, they would make amazing models. So very happily, they both said yes. And the theme of the issue was layers. And so we asked designers to kind of come up with new and interesting ways of illustrating what layers mean in knitwear. So it's really beautiful and bright and happy. And I can't wait for people to see it.
And as far as designers are concerned, do you put out calls for submissions? Is this a situation where a freelance knitwear designer could, submit an idea and have it be considered for publication?
Absolutely. And in fact, we're sending out a call for submissions today or tomorrow for winter 2023, so about a year from now. The theme is monochrome. So, you just go to pompommag.com/submissions, and there's a link to sign up to our mailing list. And so you'll get an email when a new call comes out, and it's open to absolutely anyone. And we've worked with super experienced designers, and we've worked with designers who've never published a pattern in their lives. And it seems to have worked out pretty well.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. What a good opportunity for people. So I'd love to get to your recommendations, if that's okay, because you've got some good really good ones. And for the first one, and I checked this out after you sent it over, it's an Instagram account, and it sounds like she's like a professor, but she talks about like folk art history and like commentary on folk art. So I'd love to hear why you love this account.
Oh, I think I came across it at first because somebody had shared, there was this whole discussion on TikTok that kind of made it over to Instagram about how color was disappearing from the world. And I thought it was so fascinating. Pom Pom is very colorful, and it's something that is kind of integral to what we do. And I am of Indian heritage, and I feel like growing up, I always felt like a bit bright, and so I thought it was really interesting how she brought it down to white supremacy, and also the kind of tech influence on why color was kind of fading from our culture. And it was just so super interesting. And then, I started following her, and everything she talks about is interesting. So I could spend hours just like looking at her videos and then researching the stuff that she's talked about. So,
yeah, I love taking art history classes in college, so it kind of reminded me of the content of those classes too. So we'll link to the account in the show notes for this episode for folks who want to head over and check it out. And then you have a favorite TV show that I've been meaning to watch, but it's on Hulu, and that's the one streaming service we don't get, but it's called The Bear. And I hear such good things about this show.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really sure what to expect. It's about a guy who runs a sandwich shop in Chicago. It's just so beautifully done. The writing is amazing. It's like, I loved Mad Men, and how every episode of Mad Men was like its own novel kind of thing. And The Bear has writing that's up there with that. And I don't watch anything twice, but I would absolutely watch this over again.
All right. I'm going to like shell out the money and get this, just like for a month.
Free trial. Yeah.
Yeah. And just do it all and then cancel. That's what I like to do. So that sounds good. And then you also wanted to recommend project bags and needle cases from Black Pearl Magic.
Yes, I discovered these via our social media manager, Gabriella, who I think snagged one of these bags at Rhinebeck this year. But they're really cool. They're made. I don't know what you would call the material, but it's kind of translucent and really amazing colors and all handmade, and they're so cool. And the look of them really fits in well with our forthcoming spring issue. So it's obviously a theme in my mind right now, but they're super cool. And she makes these really cool needle cases too. I know I have so many needles. I always need new ways to organize them. So I would definitely check those out if I were you.
Okay, super. So we'll link to those as well. And Meghan, this has been really great. I loved learning about the history of this magazine, and I wish you guys just all the best as, in the years to come, overcoming the paper shortage challenge and all the rest. And, I think Pom Pom is just like a wonderful addition to the craft publishing world.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's episode was sponsored by Craftsy. Whether you're new to making or looking to advance skills in a favorite hobby, Craftsy is the place to learn. With over 1,500 classes, there's something for everyone. From knitting and sewing to baking and cooking, gardening, embroidery, quilting, and more. Visit CraftsyOffers.com today for a special holiday deal. Get a full year of Craftsy premium membership for just $3. That's 97% off the regular price. Start turning ideas into projects you can be proud of. Thank you so much, Craftsy. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. So join us at craftindustryalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.